thing working. Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Dogs and Rebs win, and Jackson State. They're all on a roll. 2 of the 3 are undefeated, and Mississippi State's 5-1. Here's what's crazy. Mississippi State has played 3 SEC West games, opponents. Ole Miss has not played one. And it's October 10th. Isn't that wild? We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. Our guests join us on the Dos Equis guest line, and your SEC Insider Hit is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your Farm Bureau Insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in Mississippi. We welcome in our friend Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. He'll be heading out to the BYU-Arkansas game. That's at BYU this weekend. Lugs, good morning. How's the day going?
It's going good, man. Been up bright and early. We've got a ESPN 300 rankings update that'll be posting later on this week. It's so funny hearing your little intro there. You're talking about the Ole Miss Rebs. And, I got a chance to see them throttle Georgia Tech. I came away very, very impressed. But I also feel like we still have no idea how actually good they are, right? I mean, you sit there and you look at what's coming down the pipe. Auburn, at LSU, at A&M, Alabama, at Arkansas, Mississippi State to close it up. I mean, we're really probably not going to truly know until the Egg Bowl how good Ole Miss really is.
Yeah, the schedule's crazy. Powder puff,
it is.
The first part, and then you just went through the gauntlet. And they haven't – this is unheard of in the league, period, but they've yet to play an SEC West game, Luke's.
I know. It's so strange. And you kind of figure, I mean, if you're Lane Kiffin, you're sitting there going, all right, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Let's split it up a little bit, right? Let's see if we can throw that at Arkansas game where the Georgia Tech game was, or, the at A&M game where the Tulsa game was. It's something. I mean, that's murderer's row coming down the pike here.
Yeah. And look, they did what they sleptwalk. You still don't want to be down 2017 at half, regardless if you're sleepwalking to Vandy. Because Vandy's awful. But hey, they did what they needed in the second half. The game, Leach gets a little revenge on Arkansas, Tom. They were 2-0 against him, and both close games in which Mississippi State could have won. But, the Dogs did what they needed to do. They run the football. They throw the football at will.
Wait. Say that again.
They ran the football, man.
Did you see the first 3 plays of the game?
Yeah, I was there.
What have we been talking about for 3 years here? Right? It's awesome. I love this. I'm telling you right now, this is what's going to change that team. When the defense decides. See, this is the thing. Barry Odom, in the 2020 season, if you go back to what Barry Odom did, he's the first one, because the following week that season they played Kentucky. Kentucky did the exact same thing. And they rushed 3, dropped 8, had basically a 4 to 4.5 man box, right? Mississippi State wouldn't run it. What does Barry Odom do on Saturday? Literally went into his 2020 game plan file, pulled out the same game plan, and thought it was going to work twice in a row. What does Mike Leach do? No, we're not doing that anymore. You're going to give me that box? We're just going to hand the ball off.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's great.
The flip side is they weren't capable of running it 2 years ago. I've talked to the staff,
Maybe not.
And they said once Colin Hill threw a fit and thought that they were going to allow him to run the team like Joe Moorhead did, and Leach said that's not how it works under my deal. And Colin thought that he could make that play, and it just didn't work. Marks and Dylan Johnson were not capable of, 1, hitting the hole, 2, breaking any tackles as true fresh. Some running backs are, but those guys were not. That's been the counter to when I've asked those assistant coaches personally about that.
And that's fair. That's fair. Because, but boy, I love to see it, man, because I think it's going to make a world of difference in their football team.
Oh, no, you're right. I mean, for Dylan Johnson and Marks to rip off 177 yards, as you said, just totally opened it up for Will Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
And all those guys. And look, they were running wide open at that point because, like you said, Barry Odom thought he could do this, and it didn't work, and boom. We talked about this with you for years now, taking advantage of windows of opportunity. And the last 2 years was a good time to be good in the West because of all the transition and the lack of good quarterback play at some of the big boys. And just, Tom, talk about that. You got a 6-0 Ole Miss team, and Mississippi State's 5-1 and has played 3 SEC West games, which is pretty damn good. But you got to take advantage of the window at Auburn, LSU, and A&M, and kind of the dysfunction, transition, and lack of QB play there.
There's no question that Ole Miss cannot play down to the level of the competition within the conference. They could get away with that, all right, against the Vanderbilt out of the SEC. But when you're in your division and you've got Auburn playing the way they're playing, LSU just got off to a horrendous start. And once you get behind against that Tennessee team, man, it is difficult to crawl back in. And then, you know, what we've seen out of A&M, they are what they are, you know. And those are 3 games that not only Ole Miss can win, they should win. And it will be very interesting to see if they come out and play like they're capable of, because that would set up a dandy on November 12th.
Yes. So are you buying Mississippi State? Where are you as far as what they're doing?
Yeah, I think if you go back to your archives when we talked about in the preseason, and there were 2 teams I was really surprised weren't ranked. Well, no, it was 2 teams I was surprised where they were ranked. And one of them was Mississippi State not being ranked. But they returned the most experienced football team of anybody in the conference as far as play experience, more experience than everybody else in the conference. The quarterback, all the weapons were back. They're big on defense. The offensive line played good football. I just thought, wow, how can this team have the come off the season they had last year, have everybody back, and we're not looking at them as a top 25 team. I think that they're actually playing as advertised. I'm not surprised by their record in any way, shape, or form.
That's true. You did say that in August. Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. He joins us on the Dos Equis guest line. As you look at Mississippi State going to Kentucky, and I think Levis will play, but who knows? Size that up for me. You know, Kentucky trying to figure it out without Levis. I watched that South Carolina game. You know, neither team was that good on Saturday night. But South Carolina won the game. So when you look at the matchup between the Dogs and the Cats in Lexington this Saturday night, what do you see?
One team's playing with confidence and one isn't. I think that's the thing about Kentucky right now. They are really kind of trying to search and find a rhythm, who they are. They haven't been able to get back to being that bully in the play yard that's just going to beat you up in the run game. I don't want to knock Will Levis. I think Will Levis is a very, very talented player, but I also think he's a very, very streaky player. And for all of his physical gifts, I just don't know how consistently productive he can show himself to be. And they need him to play. There's no doubt about that. They need him to play. But I think what we're going to see here is if he does play, how consistent is he? And then if you're Jackson Dart, and I go back to the game against Georgia Tech on the field, and he threw an ill-advised throw that got intercepted, and Lane Kiffin blew up on him. And I think it's because they know how talented he is, but they also know how much confidence he has in his talent, which leads him to make dumb decisions with the football. And I think Lane was trying with the early portion of Ole Miss's schedule to see if he could kind of get that out of him before it starts to get really, really tough. And so it's a long way of getting to the point where I'm saying he has to go on the road and play really, really clean football. And if he plays clean football, I think Ole Miss wins the game because I think they're playing with confidence, and Kentucky's trying to find their way right now, and they're not playing with confidence.
So, when you think about Ole Miss, all right, Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Ole Miss host Auburn this weekend at 11 a.m. Auburn's in disarray, and they've also been through a tough stretch, and Georgia woke up this weekend and took them out of the game in the first few minutes of the game. So when you look at Ole Miss hosting Auburn, you think Ole Miss runs away with this thing, or do you think Auburn has a little more juice in the tank?
I think I think Auburn's run out of gas. I think they're hanging on by the thinnest of thread. I was really surprised at their approach against Georgia. I mean, the attempt to throw the football as often as they did, I don't know if it was because they just felt like they couldn't hold up front. They weren't going to be able to make a move in the run game. You've got Robbie Ashford as an athletic quarterback. You've got Tank Bigsby, but they're not very good in the offensive line. So they completely abandoned the run game. And in my opinion, I don't think it's even a discussion on whether or not this is a game. I think Auburn is done. I'm not saying that to say that Brian Harson's lost the team. I just don't think they're good enough. They're inept in the passing game. And they can't make any of their own breaks. And then when they get a gift, when something good happens, they can't seem to capitalize on it. And I don't. That's not winning football.
How would you describe Auburn's roster right now? I know that they're a top 12-ish recruiter. You follow this more. Attrition. I mean, are they? Is it still a pretty good roster? Is it way off? Do they still have some dudes compared to the last 6 to 8 years? How would you compare? How would you describe this Auburn roster right now?
Lacking of both depth and talent. And when you compare it to, let's just say, the roster they've had 5-6 years ago, and you remember those defensive linemen that they were playing with, whether it was a Montravius Adams, a Carl Lawson, who were the two big, Derek Brown. I mean, they had some guys, right? I mean, you had linebackers, you had tall corners. They don't look like that anymore. The offensive line, I think, has taken a huge step back. But you know what? This is kind of like they're not going after the guys that they're capable of getting, if that makes sense. Like when we become accustomed to seeing Auburn be in on a lot of big names, a lot of high-profile guys, right? And they would sign many of them so that you can compete with a Georgia, you can compete with an Alabama, you can compete with a Florida. But they haven't done that the last couple of cycles. And I just think that who they're targeting is not good enough. It's just not good enough. And to me, that more than anything else is probably why they need to make a change. Wins and losses aside, and I think Brian Harson's a really good football coach. I think he took the wrong job in the wrong footprint of this country,
right?
And probably was not ready for what they would have to be up against in recruiting.
Sure. No, we've seen it here. Joe Moorhead. I mean, he's a good football coach. He took the wrong. He was in way. It's way over his head. It's just a different animal. Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. He joins us on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. So State at Kentucky, Auburn at Ole Miss. Are you picking our teams this week, or are you picking? I can tell you're picking Ole Miss. Who do you like in the State-Kentucky game, MSU or Kentucky?
Yeah, and I misunderstood you on my previous analysis on Mississippi State and Kentucky. Mississippi State being on the road, not Ole Miss. Obviously, Ole Miss has already played Kentucky. I like Mississippi State for really the same reasons that I discussed. Better quarterback play. One team's got confidence, the other team doesn't. Okay. Same thing. And then, without question, Ole Miss.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're at home. And again, they're just playing much better football. But again, this is a streak of games coming up where you and I could be having a conversation 3 or 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, that could be a lot different than the one we're having now.
No doubt.
Depending on how they continue to progress.
How surprised were you? You called the LSU spring game.
Yeah.
We talked to you afterwards about it, and we obviously preview LSU with you a lot when you jump on. You are more than familiar with their roster, and it may not be what it was. Well, it's not what it was 3 years ago, but still they have dudes. I doubt you were surprised that Tennessee won, but for LSU to get blown out and run out of their stadium, did that surprise you?
Absolutely, it did. It surprised me. Number one, why are you kicking off a game in Baton Rouge at 11 o'clock in the morning? That's your first problem. All right. That's not the same as playing at 3:30 or prime time there. So then the early going of the game, how the game played out early, completely took LSU out of the crowd. Just all the air went out of the stadium. And then when that Tennessee team jumps on you, they've become really good at keeping the foot on the gas, and they don't let up. And unless you're built to get into a track meet, which in the passing game, LSU is not built that way because Jaden Daniels is way too streaky and inconsistent in the passing game to keep up. That's what worries me about Tennessee and Alabama this coming week, is if Alabama doesn't have Bryce Young and Tennessee gets off to a fast start, Alabama ain't getting into a track meet with Jalen Milroe.
No.
They're not good enough there. And that's exactly what happened to LSU. So not surprised Tennessee won, very surprised at how they won, but the way the game started was why they won the way they won.
All right, if Bryce Young can play, and let's say he's 80%, how would you handicap that game in Knoxville?
If Bryce Young's 80%?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's not so much. It's going to be more about pain tolerance. So pain tolerance can be dealt with medication.
Sure.
And so he might be at 100%. Who knows? But what's his range of motion like? You know, does he have full power and the ability to throw it normally, not have to change anything up? Then I think that it's going to be a heck of a football game. I just don't. Tennessee is not the better team, but in the last couple of weeks, maybe Tennessee's playing as good, if not better, football.
Yeah, that's a good
playing
way
at
to
home.
put it. Okay.
They're playing at home, and they got and they actually believe they can win. That's the other part.
Hell yeah, they do.
When was the last time we saw a Tennessee-Alabama game where Tennessee actually thought they could win the game?
It's been 17 years. So
that's another part of it. This game, I think, is a really, really scary matchup. But if they've got Bryce Young, I think they're going to be just fine. The game could likely go deep into the fourth quarter.
Okay, I sure hope it does. Tom Luginbill on the Dos Equis guest line. Okay, you're going to think I'm crazy here, and that's fine. People think I take crazy pills every morning before the show with some of the things I say. I just think this is where we are in college football today, especially with some programs. I don't think Brent Venables is going to make it this year. I don't think you can't win at the level they've won the last 22 years, 240 games, averaging 10 to 12 games a year, and do this. You can't throw up a goose egg. People will check out. It's just a bad deal, and they're going to lose several more games because he's going against really good coaches down the stretch, including Gundy and Aranda and Kleiman. How do you think I think they're going to move off of him December 1. I don't think Castiglione, the chancellor, and so on can do this. And it will be nuts, and people will go crazy over the buyout. How do you see it? They didn't even score a point, Tom, and this is not Texas 2005.
Oh, boy. This is what's so alarming and disturbing about this isn't that they've lost. It's that they're non-competitive. I think when you become non-competitive, there's more deeper-rooted issues. And right now they are a non-competitive football team. Now, for all the talk that everybody has about, the transfer portal and how much it's transformed rosters and this and that, you could actually say the exact opposite about Oklahoma. Look at what the transfer portal has done to them. One of their best receivers is now at Arkansas. All right. Caleb Williams goes to SC. Tanner Mordecai is starting for SMU. Spencer Rattler's at South Carolina. They're now playing with a quarterback who was a backup to Kenny Pickett at Pitt, not good enough. They literally were trying to come up with any way they could to somehow get a first down by using, how about this, 7 players lined up at quarterback for them against Texas. All of their best defensive players from last year got drafted. Isaiah Thomas, Perion Winfrey, Nick Benito, all of them gone. This is just my personal opinion. their players, as in the level of players on defense, is really, really poor.
Wow.
And you started to see it last year. When they were coming into the season and they were supposed to be really, really good, right? And they had all of those guys in their defensive front seven, and they stunk. They regressed. They actually got worse. And so I don't know what to make of this. I think Brent Venables is a good coach. Now, obviously, he doesn't have Clemson's players, and that's, we can go back to that every single time, though. You either have players or you don't. If you got elite players, you're a really, really good coach. If you don't have elite players, you're a bum, right? Right now, they don't have elite players there, and he looks like a bum. I'm not saying he is one,
sure,
but that's what happens in this profession. They better get things going quickly, though, because they're going to be heading into a conference where if you think you're going to play with the caliber of players they're having right now, you're going to be in serious trouble.
I think they're looking at a massive drop-off. You just nailed it. You know it. I've watched it for years. When you go on these 3 and 4 game stretches in the Southeastern Conference and you pull a top 5 recruiter, a top 10 recruiter, and a top 15 recruiter, and the physicality index, and it compounds and all that, and the shoulder, they've never experienced that. And all their fans, you can't talk a fan out of this. All they know is they've been unbelievable since Stoops got there. And even other than that 10-year window, Switzer was on a hell of a run and so on. I think they are going to absolutely drop off the map like Nebraska, Luke's.
Whew, number one, that wouldn't be good for college football, and the Oklahoma Sooner fans might jump off the nearest bridge. That's a very, very proud fan base.
Yes.
And they love their Sooners, and if that happened, boy, that would be really, really, really disappointing. The only thing that I would say would be different than them being Nebraska is they border on the state of Texas, and they're going to have those 3 little letters of SEC that's going to help them in recruiting.
Yeah, I agree. They will recruit, I think, a little bit better. All right. Ohio State's in, and then we'll see what happens between Georgia, Bama, and Tennessee. Maybe 2 of the 3 get in. It looks like Clemson's trending the right way. All right?
Yep.
Now, Southern Cal and UCLA are undefeated. I don't think they've got enough juice, but do you think that we could get a Pac-12 team, there's a long way to go, in this college football playoff party, Luke's?
Yeah, I think UCLA is a dark horse. I think SC is a dark horse, even though I don't think SC is anywhere near the top 10 roster right now. People keep glossing over the fact that opponents have turned the ball over like 15 times against USC. Like, it's ridiculous how many gifts they've been given. But yeah, I think UCLA, I think USC. I look at Oregon getting hot all of a sudden. Somebody out of that conference could end up being, could either be undefeated, 1 loss, and be a Pac-12 champion. And depending on the chaos everywhere else, could absolutely be a dark horse there.
Have fun at BYU this weekend, man. Thank you, buddy.
Well, you bet, man. See it.
Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. He joined us on the Dos Equis guest line. Show is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Also, the show is brought to you by Went McGee, MortgageManMS.com. He'll shop the best rates for you. MortgageManMS.com.